Hello everyone and welcome to today's videos. Just a few days ago on Tuesday, we officially got the 2025 Virginia primary elections, and we finally know who the Republican and Democratic nominees are going to be for some of the top races in Virginia for the 2025 elections. I'm going to start first with the Lieutenant Governor Democratic primary. Seeing as the Republican primary, we already know that Republican John Reed is going to be the Republican nominee, and he was running unopposed, so there was not a competitive primary on that side of things. For the Democratic side, however, there was a very competitive Democratic primary going on between Ghazala Hashmi, LeVar Stoney, and Aaron Ruse being the top three candidates up for this race, with three other Democrats as well getting under 10% of the vote. And this ended up being a very close race where Ghazala Hashmi ended up winning with 27.4%, to LeVar Stoney's 26.6%, and then Aaron Ruse's 26.3%. So a very close race. Hashmi winning over Stoney by only 0.8% in a very, very close race. When you look at the raw vote numbers here, Hashmi getting about 131,865, Stoney getting 128,262, only about 3,600 votes separating Hashmi and LeVar Stoney in this very, very close competitive race. And when you start looking at this map, the first county that comes to note is right here, Henrico County. This is where the city of Richmond is, or Richmond City right here. Hashmi won in Richmond City. It's worth noting here because LeVar Stoney does come from Richmond, so this should be his main area of support. However, it was Hashmi that won Richmond in the Richmond area, which ended up playing very pivotal for this race. When you look at some of the big population centers in Virginia, first I'll look at the suburban Virginia Beach, a competitive area down here. Aaron Ruse won this area very large over his Democratic opponents. In neighboring Chesapeake, Ruse also won, and Suffolk and Isle of Wight as well. When you go up into the Richmond area, we saw Hashmi do very well in Henrico, in Richmond City, in Hanover, in Powhatan as well. And this area throughout the rural part of the western part of Virginia, we saw Hashmi do very well as well. We saw LeVar Stoney do very well in Pennsylvania, Halifax, Mecklenburg, these tiny rural counties on the border with North Carolina. And that moves up into this area up here, leading into the DC suburbs as well, into the three main counties of Loudoun, Fairfax, and Prince William. And it's very interesting here. We saw Loudoun go for LeVar Stoney, very, very, very close margin over Ghazala Hashmi, only roughly about, 40 votes or so, about 34 votes separating Stoney and Hashmi in Loudoun County, so very, very close, important area here. In Prince William County, Babar Latif actually defeated LeVar Stoney, Aaron Ruse, and Ghazala Hashmi in this area by about 7% of the vote. But then in Fairfax, which is the largest population of the three counties, this one easily went for Ghazala Hashmi, or not easily, I'm sorry, just it went for Ghazala Hashmi by a close margin of 25.9% to 25.1% for LeVar Stoney, roughly about a 600 vote difference between Hashmi and Stoney in Fairfax County. And that ended up, when you look at the overall votes, played into a very narrowed victory for Hashmi over Stoney. I'll be getting into the polling in this race overall in just a few seconds, but a very, very close election here. As for the Attorney General race, a similarly very competitive Democratic election. However, there were only two candidates running, Jay Jones and Shannon Taylor, but this one ended up being 51% to 49%. Jones getting about 244,503 votes, Taylor getting 234,817. A very, very close election, only 9,686 votes separating Jones and Taylor when everything is said and done. When you look at this map, we see, for instance, in the Virginia Beach area, Jay Jones winning by a large margin in Virginia Beach, in Chesapeake, in Suffolk, in Norfolk, and in the surrounding area up here. We see the city of Richmond City itself go for Jay Jones over Shannon Taylor by a very close margin. He wins there. Outside of that, Henrico County goes for Shannon Taylor. Shannon Taylor then pretty much won every single county on the western part of Virginia up here. And then leading into the DC suburbs, we actually saw Loudoun County very narrowly go for Shannon Taylor over Jay Jones by only about 100 votes or so. Very, very close. Prince William was a 50-50 tie in the percentages, Shannon Taylor defeating Jay Jones in Prince William County by, look at this, only 3 votes with 96% of the vote in. So a very, very close margin of victory in Prince William there. And then Fairfax, this county went for Shannon Taylor by 53.6 to 46.4, roughly a 5,000 vote difference. So even though the DC suburbs in this election voted for Shannon Taylor, Jay Jones was able to perform well enough in these areas, as well as running up the vote in the central and southeastern part of Virginia, was able to rack up enough votes to end up winning by about 9,700 votes in a very, very close race. So as for how these races ended up going, the 2025 lieutenant gubernatorial election, the Republican John Reed, who again, as I mentioned, is running unopposed after he got the nomination for this, he'll be the Republican nominee, and now Hashmi will be the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor. She had the endorsements going into it of Ro Khanna and Leslie Byron. As for some of the other opponents, Aaron Rose had the endorsements of U.S. Representatives Elaine Loria and Bobby Scott. LeVar Stoney had the endorsement of Pete Buttigieg, as well as Terry McAuliffe, the former governor and Democratic nominee for governor in 2021. The early polling in this race showed this race was completely wide open, with 63% of the vote saying undecided in the last poll. The poll before that, 46% undecided. So this was a wide open race. However, it is worth noting Stoney did lead in first place, Rose was in second place, and then Hashmi was in third place in this poll. The poll from back in March showed Stoney and Rose tied for first place, with Hashmi and technically second or third place, depending on how you want to look at it. So a very, very close race. In my prediction, I believe I had LeVar Stoney winning this race, so it's very close, but Hashmi does end up winning and advances to the general election. There hasn't been too much polling done for this race, only one hypothetical poll for John Reed versus a generic Democrat from about about a week ago or so, where John Reed led 41 to 39, with 2% saying other and 18% undecided in this Republican affiliated poll. So very much kind of like the primary polls for this one as well. A lot of undecided vote. It's really going to be contingent on how the governor's race is going and what the election environment is going to be like in Virginia. On the attorney general side of things, Jason Myers, the incumbent attorney general, is running for re-election. He's also running unopposed. He'll now be facing off against Jay Jones, the former Washington, D.C. assistant attorney general and former state delegate for the 89th district. He had the endorsement of U.S. Representative Bobby Scott, former Governor Terry McAuliffe, and former Governor Ralph Northam. As for Shannon Taylor, she had the endorsement of two prior attorney generals of Virginia, Mary Sue Terry from back in the late 80s and early 90s, and then Mark Herring, the former attorney general of Virginia from 2014 to 2022, where I do believe he lost to Jason Myers in a very, very close race. As for the polling on this one, very similar. Only one poll was done. It showed Taylor leading over Jay Jones by about 10 points, but still 60% of the vote was undecided, so the margin of victory was really up for grabs. You weren't going to know until the race happened, and Jay Jones ends up winning a very, very close election by about 10,000 or so votes. As for the polling in this one, again, that same Republican-affiliated poll shows Myers and a generic Democrat tied at 44 to 44, with 12% of the vote undecided. So Myers has a higher floor of support than either we've seen out of Winsome Sears or out of John Reed, but it is worth noting that the generic Democrat is tied at 44-44 and 12% undecided. Again, this is going to be really close, and depending on the election environment and how Winsome Sears is doing, this could play a very important role for what the election ends up looking like. And it wouldn't be a Virginia video without just doing a quick update on the 2025 race. We know Winsome Earl Sears will be the Republican nominee for Virginia in 2025, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. We know Abigail Spanberger, the former U.S. Representative, will be the Democrat nominee. Let's get down into the predictions and polling. So right now, Cook, Politico, and Sabato has it as lean Democrat. Inside has it as tilt Democrat. Looking at the early polling so far, including that coefficient Republican poll that I mentioned earlier in the video, Abigail Spanberger has now led in every single poll against Winsome Sears. She's either led or in two instances she was tied, including in this coefficient poll, the same poll from back in January. So Abigail Spanberger is either led or tied in every single poll, which does show a pretty consistent trend here. Abigail Spanberger is leading in this race, and she certainly seems to have a higher floor of support. When you look at the most recent polls as well, she seems to be hovering around the mid-45s to low 50% of the vote, where Winsome Sears seems to be in the high 30s to low 40s. Abigail Spanberger is starting out with about a 4 to 5 point lead in most cases when you average it out. So Spanberger certainly seems to be starting off with the advantage in this race. But it's not just the governor's race as well. Let's say Abigail Spanberger wins this race. This also going to have important ramifications for the lieutenant governor and for attorney generals. These three races are elected separately. In Virginia, it's possible we could see a Democratic governor win, but a Republican lieutenant governor or Republican attorney general win. It's possible we could see all three go to the Democrats. We don't know until Election Day, obviously, but we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But I would say right now, given the election environment, it would make more sense that as the incumbent attorney general, Jason Mayaris probably has the strongest chance at getting reelected in 2025 than Sears or Reed do at getting elected. But again, we'll have to wait and see, but I would think Mayaris starts out with the strongest chance, though right now it seems like the election environment for all three races is benefiting the Democrats at this time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video.